I was sure that fate favored me. I didn't have to grab stars from the sky, but life was going well, plus or minus. By the time I was 24, I had a pretty good job. I was a tennis instructor. I've loved this sport since I was a kid, and now he could do it all the time, teaching others. And he also got paid for it. Not everyone in life is lucky enough to do what they love. That's why I cherished this place. However, the money was quite modest. I would never see my own place with such a salary. But I was lucky with that too. My great aunt, who had no relatives other than our family, left me an apartment as a legacy. Just like that, for nothing. Although I had my suspicions that relatives had asked for it. Her only son became an alcoholic and died before reaching the apartment. In a drunken stupor, he unsuccessfully fell down the steps, breaking his neck. Since then, Natasha has been helped by my mother and grandmother. I rarely saw her, and I wasn't involved in any way. That's why I was surprised to learn that the apartment was transferred to me. I moved into that old house on Chekhov Street. I re-glued the battered wallpaper, replaced the old creaky bed with a new one with an orthopedic mattress, gradually settled in, somehow arranged a bachelor lifestyle. I made repairs and bought furniture as needed. Then he began to look at people more closely, and I found out that an interesting girl lives in the next doorway. She's pretty, even very pretty, or maybe she was just my type. I immediately liked her dark brown hair, expressive eyes, and constantly parted lips. She dressed inconspicuously, wearing voluminous t-shirts, light jeans, and white sneakers. This girl seemed quiet and timid. There was something cozy about her, and I liked it. I immediately wanted her to pay attention to me too. I was unconsciously showing off in front of her, walking past, throwing a tennis racket over my shoulder, putting on a serious look, pulling my hair with my fingers. Finally, I had a chance to show some gallantry. She was returning home with a large box from the pickup point, and I ran over and helped her with the door. "Thank you," she said, looking into my eyes. Now, I have a reason to greet her. It seemed that this girl herself was interested in getting to know each other, but I didn't want to seem arrogant and scare her with assertiveness. I thought let everything develop by itself. One day, I was returning from work and met her in the yard. "Hi," I said, smiling. "Hi," she replied and asked, "Do you have a racket in your case?" Although it seemed to be obvious. "No, it's a weapon," I replied, making a serious face. "I'm actually a contract killer." "Yeah, and the best way to lie is to tell the truth." The girl grinned, and her eyes sparkled. That's how we started talking. It turned out that her name was Christina. She was a year and a half younger than me and was a senior law student in our city. She lived in an apartment and lived alone, just like me. We also had similar interests in many ways. We liked the same TV shows, food, and other little things. Christina said that she had always been interested in tennis, but there was no reason to try herself in it. After those words, I didn't even have to figure out how to ask her out. She played, of course, it doesn't matter. She constantly dropped her racket, missed, and did not notice the ball because of her poor eyesight. But it was obvious that she was having fun. The girl was sweating profusely, but she did not give up trying to develop the skill of the game. "If everyone had your tenacity, I'd be out of a job," I joked, trying to cheer her up. "Don't suck up," she exclaimed, kicking the ball away. "I know I'm too clumsy for tennis. I used to be too clumsy myself, but if you do what you love every day, you just can't help but learn it." After a couple of hours on the tennis court, our relationship began to develop rapidly. We spent every evening together, walking, watching movies. Christina visited me, and I visited her. And one day, for a change, I suggested that she go to the cinema. I hadn't been there for a long time, but I remembered that I used to like it. We met at the house, as agreed. Christina took my arm and we set off, intending to walk to the mall. But suddenly the girl stopped abruptly and pulled me in the other direction, although there was not the shortest way to the main street. "What are you?" I asked in surprise. "Let's just go the other way. We're not late," Christina replied, clutching my arm tighter. "They say you need to change familiar routes from time to time." I silently agreed and followed her. But when I looked back, I realized what had caused her to turn off the path. There was a strange man standing in the direction we were heading to. From a distance, his facial features seemed eerie, grotesque. He was completely bald and shone like a wax figure. His eyes were huge, bulging and round, like a fly's. And his mouth was so big that it looked more like an animal's mouth, as if his cheeks had been torn from ear to ear. As we walked, Christina talked about everything. I talked about the weather, that I hadn't eaten popcorn in so long, and I remembered how I once caught a cold in the cinema because of the air conditioners. It seemed to me that she was trying to distract me in order to avoid an unpleasant topic, but I asked anyway. "And what kind of person was standing there? Do you know him?" "Who are you talking about?" the girl asked softly, with a look of complete incomprehension. "We were walking, and there was a guy standing on the road, and you pulled me in the other direction," I reminded her. "Who is he?" "There was no man there." Her words sounded like nonsense, because I definitely remembered seeing someone. "Are you kidding me? You're wearing glasses, so you definitely should have noticed that strange, creepy passerby." "Well, there was someone bald and menacing. I was scared. I didn't want to run into trouble, and we left." "Be nervous," Christina replied. "And who is it? Why is he so scary?" I persisted. "How should I know?" Christina dropped my hand. "A man is like a man, maybe just a gopnik or a bum. Why are you bothering me with this guy? Catch up and find out who he is." Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't want conflicts, and I didn't understand why I was so worried about a random scarecrow from the street. "Let's be friends." I held out my little finger and smiled at her. I wanted to smooth out this unpleasant moment between us so that the rest of the evening would go well. Christina looked at me carefully, and then, smiling in response, she also held out her finger. We continued on our way to the mall in awkward silence, which we tried to smooth out with occasional meaningless conversations. The movie turned out to be a bit boring, and spending time in the cinema itself seemed like something I had experienced. The colors on the screen are faded, the sound is bad, the chair is uncomfortable, and someone in the audience was constantly coughing. I concluded that home viewing is much more comfortable. Christina agreed with me, and all the way back, we talked about how streaming services would sooner or later kill the culture of watching movies collectively on the big screen. The love of cinema built a bridge across the chasm that briefly alienated us. I even forgot about that incident at the beginning of the evening, but the girl's behavior made me remember. "Ilya, I have to get up early for school tomorrow, so I plan to go straight to bed," Christina said as we approached the house. "No problem," I replied and walked her to the entrance. Something had changed in her. She was tense, nervous, and thoughtful. She didn't even kiss me. She just hugged me and wished me a good night. Something was bothering her. I went to my entrance and saw that man again. But now, it's close. He was standing on the corner of our house, illuminated by a lantern. My eyesight was right. He was really ugly. Shiny, waxy skin, without a single hair, bulging eyes without pupils, and a wide, toothless mouth. I took a closer look. Maybe there's a scary mask on his head? But there was a feeling that this was his real face. And suddenly this man opened his mouth wider, and a red, viscous liquid gushed out of it. It was as if he had vomited blood. The liquid flowed down his chin and neck. She soaked her already dirty shirt, which was torn in several places. I coughed with nausea and went into the entrance so as not to see this abomination. The sight of this man is imprinted in my memory, and for the rest of the evening, I was overcome with nausea. I was constantly thinking about what I saw, and I couldn't help but share these experiences with my girlfriend. Christina, I've just met that strange guy again. He stood there and vomited blood. Seriously, I'm telling you, you just be careful, okay? I sent a voice message. The girl listened to it, but did not answer. Strangely, she still reacted to it. I had a bad feeling about it, and it didn't let me down. There was a murder in our house that night. I didn't see it myself, but the rumors spread instantly. Neighbors said that the man from apartment 36 had died. He was found with a pierced eye in a pool of blood. Apparently, he was hit in the face with something sharp. One of the witnesses overheard the conversation of the police. They said it was a wound all the way to the brain, and death was most likely instantaneous. The acquaintances of the deceased came under suspicion. He was a lonely man and often invited guests to drink. The police believed that the reason for this was an ordinary drunken quarrel with a stabbing, but I believe that it wasn't that simple. It was too much of a coincidence. First, there was that scary man. Then, this terrible death of one of the neighbors. It could be related. In the evening, when Christina and I met in my apartment, I didn't want to keep quiet about it and shared my suspicions. She listened to me in silence and then said, "Ilya, let's not talk about this." "Why is that? Do you know something?" I guessed and moved closer to her face. "I know, but we can't talk about it," she replied tensely, looking into his eyes. "Tell me something," I said. "Yes, you're right. This man killed our neighbor," Christina said, lowering her eyes to the floor. "More precisely, he is not a human being. I do not know who he is. They call him Bloody Mug. He kills people, but you can't talk about it. You can't. We must pretend that he is not there. And if you keep talking about him, there will be more victims." A tear fell from the girl's eyelashes and rolled to her lips. Okay, be quiet. I get you. That's it. I won't say or ask anything else," I promised, muttering to myself. Bloody Mug. Don't expect anything good from a guy with that name. I've been living here recently and I'm not aware of the local legends. The girl wiped her tears and said, "I know how crazy this sounds, but it's better to just trust and keep quiet. It appears every few years. People die and then disappear again. You just have to wait out this time. If you see him somewhere, don't notice him. Don't tell anyone." "Okay," I replied, nodding. I promised that I would not touch on this topic again, and if I suddenly meet him, I won't even look in his direction. Actually, I wasn't eager to get to the truth. It seemed absurd to me, but it's not for nothing that people believe in such things. There are many scary legends, and I'm not one of those who wants to check their veracity. It's enough for me to hear the warning once to stay away from it. Relations with Christina had become somewhat cold and superficial. She started avoiding me, and I decided to give her time rather than impose. I went about my business. He took more working hours, coached young athletes and ordinary amateurs, and spent his evenings alone watching a movie or a book. No one talked about the murdered neighbor anymore. as if everyone had forgotten about him immediately after the funeral. But this often happens among people who have been living aimlessly for years. He lived as an alcoholic, drank with someone, worked part-time, then died. They packed him in a coffin, slapped him on the glass on the 9th day, and went on to live their everyday lives. And not even everyone will remember his real name. For many, it will remain that way. Sanja Kasoy, from 36. I was hoping that the guy named Bloody Mug had already disappeared, but one day, when I went out into the yard in the morning, my shoe got stuck in something sticky, and sticky. Holy shit! Well, I just washed them. I swore loudly. It looked like phlegm mixed with blood. There was a puddle of red slime on the porch. He threw up here again. So he's still walking around somewhere nearby. And what does he want here? I came down from the porch, wiped my shoe from the moat, and moved towards the bus stop. Passing by the garage cooperative, I suddenly felt a heavy gaze on me. He seemed to dig into the back of my head, immediately forcing me to stop and look around. It was him. A creepy man was standing on one of the garages. His bald head shone like it was polished. His eyes were sticking out of their sockets. The toothless mouth opened to its limit, and red slime dripped from his chin, tapping a rhythm on the tin roof. What a creepy thing. I reminded myself and walked on, pressing my head into my shoulders and putting my hands in my pockets, as if trying to make myself less noticeable. On the same day, Christina called me and offered to meet. Her call came as a surprise. She came as if to test me, as if she wanted to know how firm I was in my promises. "What's new with you?" she asked. "A new one?" "It's nothing. Work, home, work, home." "I've missed you," I said, trying to hide my concern. "What do you have?" "Also, everything is the same as before. Should we watch something today?" Christina suggested. I accepted her offer without hesitation, and we spent the evening watching a comedy show where comedians answered everyday questions from their viewers. And it was kind of funny, but I couldn't just get that thing out of my head. His image was stuck in my brain and was spinning in looped frames. I was looking at the laptop monitor, but all I could see was the ugly face of this freak. I still liked Christina Baugh, but the development of our relationship had stalled. Everything became awkward, strange, and unstable. I understood that perhaps the appearance of a strange creature was to blame for everything, and I was ready to wait until it was all over. The girl refused to stay with me for the night, and then, without asking permission, I went to see her off. I wanted to see that she would at least get home safely. "Good night, Elia." Christina hastily hugged me and went to her room. "I'm going to my room." I walked and looked around. Is he somewhere nearby? The lanterns were on, the yard was empty. Only someone's cat was sitting on a bench and watching me attentively. That's good, I thought. Entering the entrance, I went up to my floor. The sounds of his own footsteps were unnaturally loud in the silence of the night. It felt like I was being watched, and the feeling was unbearable. Someone else's steady gaze seemed to pierce right through me and drill into the back of my head. I was filled with fear and hatred. I wanted to just enter the apartment without looking up at the stairs above, but I couldn't resist. He was standing there. As soon as I looked at him, he opened his nasty mouth again, and from there, a scarlet slime gushed out in an endless stream. She glanced like a bucket, gurgled down the steps, and spread a puddle on the floor at my feet. "Try it. Pretend you won't notice it." But I did it. He suppressed his fear and disgust. He opened the door and went into the apartment. All the boots and the edges of the jeans were splattered with scarlet. "Bastard, may you drown with your bloody vomit." I was silent. I didn't say anything to anyone. But it didn't help. A neighbor was killed in my building that night. She was a kind, lonely woman, plump, rosy-cheeked, and smiling. She always greeted everyone who passed by and never quarreled with anyone. She didn't have questionable guests. She didn't lie drunk at the entrance. The neighbor led a quiet retirement life, trying not to bother anyone. Who would want to kill her? And the circumstances of death were strange. The door to her apartment was open, and she was lying on the threshold with a punctured heart. It seemed that the woman had opened the door to someone, and something sharp had been thrust into her chest. A fine rain was dripping. Deep puddles formed on the shaky asphalt. I put on a light hoodie and pulled on the hood. He came out of the entrance and stood under the canopy. The body was taken out and loaded into the car. I didn't know the woman's name. She asked me to hold the door a couple of times, and last week she planted hyacinths in the yard. No one asked her to do it, she just liked doing it. I was standing on the street with other neighbors, watching the car drive away. The autumn wind blew through his hoodie and froze his feet. I was in such a hurry that I ran outside in my house shorts and indoor slippers. People sighed and muttered about what? One elderly man in a checkered chauffeur's cap mumbled. And what kind of geek would do such a thing? You know yourself, I said, unable to stand such hypocrisy. The man looked at me in surprise. Do I know how? Bloody muck, I whispered, losing my hands from the cold. Bloody? What? The man looked at me like I was stupid. Who is this guy? Is he from our house? Or a circle of oblique? I was confused and fell silent. Grandfather wasn't pretending. And I thought that everyone here was aware. They were just silent out of fear. The people around looked completely confused. They didn't really seem to understand what was going on. None of them had seen the bloody mug. No one noticed the spots of red slime everywhere. How can this be? What if Christina tricked me? Thinking about it, I called her and told her about what happened to the elderly neighbor. He asked me to explain everything that had happened. And now we'll meet in the evening and talk. I'm busy, the girl said and dropped the call. I don't like it. Christina seemed kind of weird. She was always avoiding me, and I was losing interest in her every day. I didn't even want this meeting anymore. But half an hour before midnight, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and, making sure that it was Christina, opened the door. May I come in? She asked. She sounded worried. Yes, come on in. I've been waiting for you all evening, I replied, stepping aside. Sorry, I had things to do, she said, unbuttoning her coat. I didn't ask for the details. She was acting like a stranger. We went into the room. The girl sat down on the sofa. Her eyes were glistening with tears. So what did you want to tell me? I asked, feeling my hands getting cold. The truth, the girl replied. I didn't want to tell you that only those he chose can see him. That means you, too. He'll calm down when he kills 3 people, and then it will disappear for a while. I tried to hide many times, but he always found me. Wait, what? Did he choose me as his victim? And you didn't say anything? I asked angrily. I don't know why he needs me. I guess he just likes to see me suffer when he kills people. It was torture, but I got used to it over time. Hardened by the heart, Christina hid her face behind her hair, lowering her head low. I'm afraid that if I refuse to help, he'll kill me. To help? What does it mean? I asked again, and suddenly I heard footsteps in the hallway. Didn't you close the door? I'm sorry. Christina was still sitting with her head down when he appeared on the threshold of the room. His jaw dropped. and a lump of red goo landed on the floor. Something sharp flashed in his hand. Not even a knife, but a piece of metal like a sharpener. Is this really how my life is going to end? A thought flashed through my mind, and my heart clenched with approaching fear. Christina turned her pale face to me. She wasn't crying anymore. Her gaze turned cold and empty. "You're better than me," the girl said indifferently. The creature took a step not towards me, but towards her. The blade flashed in her hand and stabbed into the girl's neck. And then the monster quickly retreated. There was silence, not understanding why this was happening. I pressed myself against the wall. Bloody Mug was standing on the threshold of the room, and Christina was sitting on the couch. She was in shock and didn't seem to realize what had happened. Blood was pouring from the wound on his neck. It ran down my skin and soaked my clothes. The girl touched her chest and looked at her palm. Then she stared at me again and wheezed, as if trying to say something. I ran up to her and put my hand on the wall. "Kristen, can you hear me? Everything will be fine. I'll fix it. Just hold on. Do you hear?" The girl did not answer. Her eyes suddenly became hazy, and she fell to the floor. A crimson puddle began to spread around her head. My heart was filled with a tearing feeling of pain and longing. I stood up and, swallowing a lump, looked at the monster. He was showing me 3 fingers. 3 fingers. 3 victims. Is that what he expects from me now? He was showing me 3 fingers. 3 fingers. 3 victims. Is that what he expects from me now?